Welcome, 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 everybody. And thank you for joining us here today to celebrate the official opening of CLAIRE's Oslo office. Now, we have a great program today. We have interesting short keynotes. We have an interesting debate about how AI will drive science and innovation through Europe. We have fascinating people from fascinating AI networks, labs, and companies. And we have gathered town. But first, a bit about CLAIRE. CLAIRE was established 3 years ago as a bottom-up researcher-driven initiative to influence the future of AI in Europe and to that influence our lives in the years ahead. And in order to achieve that, we also make ourselves available to give advice to those who are willing to listen to how Europe can become a global leader in AI, both in science and in innovation. Now, the Commission, national governments, governmental bodies who are developing the AI strategies and initiatives we will live with will be discussion partners for us as well as the communities. But to be clear about our aim, what is CLAIRE's aim? What do we want to do? Number one, CLAIRE seeks to strengthen European excellence in AI, both in research and in innovation. CLAIRE seeks to establish a virtual research and innovation ecosystem as a companion to Europe's physical ones. It is when minds meet that research and innovation excel. Number three, CLAIRE aims to establish a pan-European network of centers of excellence in AI, and it should be strategically located throughout Europe. Number four, CLAIRE focuses on trustworthy AI that augments human intelligence rather than replacing it. Number five, CLAIRE works for a major increase in funding towards existing scientific strengths in AI, towards novel innovation opportunities, and towards key European interests. Now, number six, CLAIRE sees Europe's efforts as being AI for all, AI for good, and with all of AI, with all of Europe. Number seven, CLAIRE believes Europe needs strong brand recognition in AI. Just like we have CERN drawing scientists from across the world for shorter or longer stays, just like Airbus has become a world leader in aviation, just like the European Space Agency has become a global key driver in space exploration and Earth observation. Europe has done this many times before, gotten together to create institutions that have become global beacons, that have produced European strengths across the continent. Of course, Europe can also create a global beacon, a lighthouse for AI made in Europe, a lighthouse that would draw global talents and will increase the flow of knowledge among European researchers and back to their home institutions. Those are our objectives, our goals. And where are we today? Well, CLAIRE has since become one of the largest networks of AI scientists, researchers, and technologists in the world, with 3,700 individual supporters, with more than 2,000 AI experts with PhD level expertise, and more than 1,000 industry experts. CLAIRE is also officially supported by 9 European governments. But more than this, CLAIRE added to this body of individual supporters something important, a network of AI laboratories, of research groups, and of research institutes. And I am proud to say that a week ago, we reached 400 organizations on this list from 36 countries, and their institutions employ a total of 22,000 people. That's where we are today. That's where CLAIRE is today. But where are we going? First, we are opening 4 offices over the time of 4 weeks. Last week, it was the office in Zurich. Today, it's the office in Oslo. Next week, it's the office in Paris. And then we'll open the office in Brussels. These come in addition to our offices in Saarbrücken, in Rome, Den Haag, and Prague. Second, just a few days ago, CLAIRE incorporated a new association in collaboration with 4 other great associations in AI, data, and robotics. The AI Data and Robotics Association is a partnership where we will develop proposals for and projects for the European Commission. This will mobilize European industry to increase its activities and investment in AI. The Commission plans to spend up to €1 billion on activities proposed by us. Much more of this in the opening of Claire's Paris office next week, so stay tuned. Third, we are establishing a new network after having established the world's largest network of AI scientists, labs, and groups and institutions. We are now establishing a network across all of Europe of companies that work in or with AI. With this, we will connect European companies to the world's largest network of AI scientists and labs. This is, of course, great in itself, but there is much more to it. And we can hint today about a special initiative to bring Europe's startups and scientists together. So if you haven't already, join Claire on this travel. Let us help each other strengthen the research, innovation, and uptake of AI across Europe to the benefit of all citizens of Europe. And now I'm getting to the end. At this point, I would like to thank Leiden University, DFKI, and Oslo Metropolitan University, Oslo Met, for their support in establishing Claire. Of course, since then, many others have contributed strongly, but these three were the ones that took the chance initially. And also a big thank you to Nora, who has decided to support the establishment of Claire's Oslo office, Norway office. Now you will find a great program here today. But now, first, a great introduction. I have the great pleasure to hand over the word to Norway's Minister of Local Government and Modernization, Nikolai Astrup. In his previous post as Minister of Digitization, he initiated and delivered the Norwegian government strategy in artificial intelligence. So thank you all for coming here today. Sit down and relax and enjoy the show. And welcome, and over to Minister Astrup.
We're in the midst of a digital revolution. Artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, and 5G, together they constitute the perfect storm of opportunities. In the eye of this storm, I'm very pleased to see that our excellent AI research and innovation communities are able to keep their feet on the ground and focus on the range of opportunities. And today, this is materializing in the opening of Claire's Oslo office at the premises of NORA, Norwegian Artificial Intelligence Research Consortium. Prior to launching the National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence, I was invited to give an opening speech at NORA's kickoff seminar in 2019. And with almost all the AI research and higher education institutions in Norway together in one place, it was a great opportunity for me to get direct input and expert advice on the work with the strategy. So thank you for that. Along with other prominent AI communities in Norway, NORA has been a member of CLAIRE, Confederation of Laboratories for Artificial Intelligence Research in Europe, for some time. By dedicating more specific resources to this work, NORA will now be taking on the role to serve as CLAIRE office in Norway and the Nordics. In the last couple of years, the most prominent AI research and innovation communities in Norway have joined forces in several projects. They're now cooperating closely to achieve the best use of resources and the best possible results on a national level. It's my humble opinion that cooperation, co-creation, and collaboration is of the utmost importance for future innovation and also absolutely essential for a sustainable future. As the minister responsible for coordinating the government's efforts to reach the UN Sustainable Development Goals in Norway, I'm glad to see we put our best efforts into developing technology that will be fundamental in solving our future challenges. In a global context, a strong collaboration between national actors and the European countries will strengthen the region as a whole, and also each country's own ability to succeed. In other words, a classic win-win situation. With their new startup initiative, Nora has also shown a commitment to innovation, new ideas, and new business. Combined with their new status as Clear's Norway and Nordic office, this represents a golden opportunity to showcase what synergy effect is all about. A vibrant and flourishing startup scene will help us become more agile, resilient, and technologically advanced. And in a post-COVID-19 future, startups may also play an important role in reviving the economy, finding new solutions to our sometimes old problems, and expand to reach new international markets. For instance, I believe that tech-savvy startups are an important part of solving many of the challenges we face in the public sector. In Bergen, the up-and-coming map and navigation company MazeMap will be one of 2 suppliers in a new project, where data analysis and the use of artificial intelligence will significantly improve the municipality's property management. The government's job is to provide relevant policies and regulations that facilitate the use of AI in order to exploit opportunities and competitive advantages. At the same time, AI must be based on solid ethical and responsible considerations. This is a job that we will continue to focus on in close cooperation with international partners like the EU and the OECD. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. A confederation like CLEAR represents a group that is united for purposes of a common action or goal. We will now be an even more important part of this union, steering towards excellence across all of AI for all of Europe, and with a human-centered focus, to use Claire's own words. I wish you the best of luck with the opening today, and in your future work as the national hub connecting Norway and the Nordics even closer to Claire's important work. Good luck.
Well, thank you so much to the minister. That was very good introduction. Claire has 2 national contact points, 2 national contact people in each country across Europe. In Norway, the 2 contact points are Trym Holter, who is the director of the Norwegian OpenAI lab in Trondheim, and Claes Pettersen, who is the CEO of Nora. And now I'm giving the word first to Claes Pettersen, after that to Trym. Welcome, Claes.
Thank you so much, Martin. I will now share my screen. It is, of course, not easy to have a talk after the minister. I will try to follow up as good as I can. I will speak a little bit about Nora and also relationship to Claire. And thank you, Morten and Birte and all the organizers for also inviting me to have a talk at this great event. So what is Nora? Nora is a Norwegian collaboration within AI. You can go into our web pages and download our strategy. Nora.ai is the web pages. But what we do is to collaborate within the field of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. And we do research, education, and innovation collaborations. So the organization of Nora, first of all, we are now 8 Norwegian universities, 2 university colleges, and 2 research institutes, and we are expanding. But these institutes, universities, university colleges, they typically are organized so they have their own AI labs. In the AI labs, they often or always have industry collaborations as well. And Nora is kind of the umbrella, the collaboration unit about that. I will go quickly through a couple of things that we are doing, just to give you an impression. We are working on a national research school in artificial intelligence, trying to kind of organize the PhD courses, have hackathons, have a symposium or different kind of events for students, PhD students in Norway. Doing that, we are mapping out courses, trying to see Norway as a whole. We have to kind of cover all the important field in this very fast moving field of AI. The idea is that a student at one institution could also attend important courses at other institutions and attend all the activities within the research school of NORA. That's education part. We also do innovation. And I would say with great success, last year we launched NORA.startup network in collaboration with many of the great startup companies within AI in Norway. This is the steering group of NORA Startup. What we try to do is to join the forces of academia and the startup business to do more innovation, try to get more innovation out from the universities, do collaborations on applications. We know that from the EU innovation, the innovation aspect is important. A lot of funding opportunities, of course. It's also important for society to translate important research in to innovation and to businesses. We have many startup companies that we collaborate with, already started writing proposals, having a community. And what we really aim at is to build this ecosystem in Norway, where we include not only the research community and the innovators and entrepreneurs, but also investors, corporates, and the public sector. We have many also collaboration projects going on with different entities in Norway, also the Norwegian OpenAI Lab, which was mentioned, and Trym will have a talk after me. But also here is an example, European Digital Innovation Hub. We are now applying together with the more or less the whole community in Norway, trying to get a strong AI application up and running. I imagine that the CLEAR network also will be important for European Digital Innovation Hub and connections abroad. We do collaborate with business. We do collaborate with the big AI clusters in Norway, Cluster for Applied AI, Norwegian Cognitive Center, Digital Norway. We are also involved in Oslo Science City and other innovation. And what about CLEAR then? As you said, CLEAR is a huge network. You saw Morten having up his note with 400 labs. I will give you one example on what CLEAR has contributed to the Norwegian research community. We did help Ira Haraldsen. She came to us, had a great project idea about an AI project in neuroscience. We helped Ira connect to both Norwegian researchers and also through the CLEAR network. We reached out to the AI community in Europe. And they were funded an EU project of 14 million euros, starting up just now. For the Nordic community, we will have a young researcher symposium in November. We will try to then gather all the PhD students, as many as possible, from the Nordic countries. Maybe we should also actually include the British. I didn't know that they were included in the Nordic countries, but of course they are included in the Oslo CLEAR office. We do also collaborate with the Alan Turing Institute, and the CLEAR office is now serving the Nordic countries and Great Britain. And in this Nordic AI meeting this fall, we will collaborate through the networks in the Scandinavian Nordic countries. Other projects we have, which is important collaboration task, data are important. We will also on this Nordic event have a data competition, AI competition. It is within medicine. At the conference, the winner will be announced. And we have also established, or we are about to establish, a Nordic journal, Nordic Machine Intelligence, where we will publish the results from competitions and other journal articles, both from conferences, but also from opinions. We will have opinions from the Nordic countries. So this will also be something that kind of binds the Nordic countries together and also together with the CLEAR network. And with that, I will end. As you saw, Nicolai Astrup, he was the former Minister of Digitalization. He said on our opening, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this has been kind of the guiding quote, both for NORA and I guess also for CLEAR. Thank you very much, Morten.
Thank you very much, Klaus. And as announced, next one out or in is Trym Holter, the other national contact point for CLAIR in Norway. Please, Trym, take the scene.
Thank you, Morten. I will also start by sharing my slides here. So I hope this is working. So thanks a lot for inviting me. Maybe I should echo Klaus and say it's hard to go after Klaus. But anyway, I want to start out by congratulating CLAIR on opening the new office. As you said, Morten, you want to have them distributed around in Europe, these offices, and since from Trondheim, it's maybe not a very central location, but it's still good to have the office opened in Oslo. I think CLAIR has an important role to play in strengthening Europe in terms of AI research and innovation. So thanks for driving in that direction. And I would also say, and maybe also personally to you, Morten, thanks for playing a role in the Norwegian AI community. I think during the last couple of years, I think the cooperation between the different groups and networks active in Norwegian AI has improved quite a lot. And we are interacting on a weekly, if not a daily basis, and increasingly finding ourselves together in activities and proposals and so on. I think Klaus mentioned a couple of these very important initiatives going on. Okay, so let me give you some insight into Norwegian OpenAI Lab. In many ways, a similar construction to NORA, in that it is a center meant for research, innovation, and education within artificial intelligence. We date back to 2017, starting originally as a small group with Telenor, SINTEF, and NTNU, and then widen to a larger consortium a year or so afterwards. It's a collaboration between academia, industry, and public sector. And as you said, it's hosted by NTNU in Trondheim, and NTNU is the country's largest university. It's a strong team here in Trondheim, of course, with 30+ academics. We have 75+ PhD students involved in various projects now. The AI lab partners are, well, I said Telenor and SINTEF were the founding partners from the start, and then DNB, Kongsberg, DNV, and Equinor are the founding partners of the Norwegian OpenAI Lab. And since then, we've also added more partners to the partnership, including also the latest one, which is Cibas, which is also a startup. So we have a mix of I would say, big industry players, traditional Norwegian companies, and also now smaller companies. So what are we doing together with our partners? Well, we tend to describe it in these 4 boxes. We do, of course, projects. So that's a big part of it. We're trying to establish new research and innovation projects. We are working with our students, and we also see that our partners value our students a lot. And actually, it's for me coming back to the academic sector. It's been increasingly clear for me how important the force in the students as a group. It's incredible what they can do. So we have strong student organizations working with us. We like to couple our partners with our students for the master's projects and also the PhD projects. We organize conferences, webinars, things like that. For the last couple of months, we've been organizing our weekly webinars together with NORA. So that's another example of how we are working together. And of course, also on the level of education, we have a lot of activity. I'd like to mention here maybe elements of AI, which is, as you probably know, originally developed in Finland, and we made it available for the people of Norway. Also made it available in Norwegian. A few words about say what we see as the strategic application areas, and I've scattered these slides with just some examples of projects. I'm not going to go through what these are, but you can see some examples of topics that we're working on in different projects within the different application areas, and those key application areas are the energy domain. It's health, security, oceans, as a Norwegian specialty, and also connectivity. And then I wanted just to highlight a few ongoing initiatives. Well, this is more than an initiative. This is a large center for research-based innovation, which is a partnering center with the Norwegian Open AI Lab hosted by NTNU. It's called the Norv AI, Norwegian Research Center for AI Innovation. It opened in November 2020, awarded last summer, opened in the fall. It's an 8-year project with a total budget of roughly 26 million euro. And the mission is to accelerate the innovation of sustainable and trustworthy AI solutions across Norwegian industries. And if you sort of pay attention here, you will see there's a large overlap between the partners in the Norv AI Research Center and in the Norwegian Open AI Lab. I'd also like to highlight one other of our sort of internationally directed activities, which is the Perseus Doctoral program. This is a program partly funded by the EU. And it's got this, very specific international focus because it's funded under the mobility scheme. So the program will fund 40 PhD researchers under the assumption that people will come from outside Norway. The first call will be in August this year, and the next call will be in August 2022. And you can see here the thematic areas and the verticals again are overlapping quite a bit with those of the Norwegian Open AI Lab. And finally, I wanted to mention another research school activity, the Prob AI 2021. It's going to be in a couple of weeks' time from now. Nordic Probabilistic AI School, June 14. This was first organized in 2019. Last year it was cancelled due to the pandemic situation, but this time it will go ahead as a digital event. More than 400 applications from all over the world. Actually quite a bit overbooked because the idea was to accept 200 of those, but it turned out we had 220 or something and finally accepting the offer. So it's going to be a great event starting in a couple of weeks. So with that, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for sharing. This was great, and it's I get goosebumps when I listen to the activities going on here in Norway. It's and we have just started. The potential is amazing. Now, thank you, Trym. Over to our next keynote. We're very thankful to have Professor John Crowcroft present. He is a professor, researcher at large at the Alan Turing Institute. So, Professor Crowcroft, please take the stage.
Hi, you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me. I'm also a professor in Cambridge University, where I've been for 20 years. Before that, I was at University College London from 1980. And I should say that we used to work with Paul Spilling at University in Oslo, connecting Europe to the internet in 1980. So there's a long history of working from the UK, and I'm quite happy to be accidentally referred to as Nordic I regard that as a great honor. So for the last 5 years since it opened, I've been at the Turing Institute in London, which is the National AI Institute for the UK, as has been mentioned. We have links to Europe. London is normally very well connected to mainland Europe by train, although it's a bit tricky at the moment, but certainly getting to the middle of Europe is fairly easy, France, Belgium, Netherlands, and so on, although getting to Nordic countries by train is probably not the best route. So the Alan Turing Institute is 13 university partners, some strategic partners drawn from industry and government, including large industrial outfits like Intel, Microsoft, and so on, the kind of obvious people. Originally founded with a core grant from the UK government, but also we have funds from the university and industry partners. So there's a kind of sign-up fee. That model is somewhat changing at the moment due to various budget constraints and just changes of how things are done. And we have exactly as Nora and the sort of wider Claire network has a very similar set of kind of activities, which include international participants. So we have outreach events, we have speakers for seminars, we have interest groups, many. I was in one this morning from the physics ML group, the PhiML group, which has bi-weekly seminars in a really interesting area that's a hot topic at the moment. We have a significant central research staff at the Turing Institute, and we have had a PhD program, but that's now changed because the government decided to fund a large number of PhD AI programs across the UK, and having a single central site was not a good way to run things. So that's wrapping up, but we now have an intern scheme. So we take students from everywhere in the world. I'm very happy to, as with other kinds of visitors. Another unusual thing about the Alan Turing Institute is we have funded a significant number of research engineers. This is based on the model that research labs like Microsoft Research in Cambridge run. So we have 25 to 30 full-time research engineers, people with PhDs, but who have a slight preference to build things. And that's really helpful for underpinning work by the research staff, the PhD students, and obviously academics like me, who are seconded 50 to 100% for the last few years into the Turing or collaborating with the Turing. That gives us sort of full-time support for technical work at scale. Typically, almost all the work is done open source. So we support a large number of open source projects. And the other activity we have, I think, is somebody alluded to in the previous talk to hackathons. We have data study groups, which are 1 to 2 weeks long, and we have people coming from companies that have challenges based on data they have, but they don't have the skills to analyze it. So we convene a group of 20, 30, 40 people, and they literally work on like flat out for up to 2 weeks and generate 2 or 3 solutions and compare sort of the best of a breed, if you like. And we have fairly significant donated cloud compute resource on the order of $1 million a year from the big cloud providers each, and also national resources. So people kind of enjoy not running out of resource very often, although every now and then somebody decides to run a comparison of all the natural language translation algorithms using all the GPUs on Azure for 2 weeks. I'm not joking. That was impressive. So lots of good things happen. I'm obviously taking a snapshot of some things I see, but there are many other such activities. Privacy preserving data analytics, very important to us. A lot of data is, healthcare data, personal data, but you still want to do things with it. But so privacy is very crucial, and it's part of data ethics as well. And we have a strong data ethics group, and all the work goes through them to check, because there may be novel ethical problems brought up by kind of AI problems. We have all kinds of interesting things. Urban analytics got turned aside during the pandemic to look at whether you could infer how well people's behavior was being affected by government advice by looking at transport and energy usage. That's kind of interesting. We have a group that works on fairness and transparency, has industry speakers, people come over the road from DeepMind, which is next door to the Turing Central London location, and so on. So lots of other groups there. One there called Protocol Governance for Blockchain, for example, was run by a research engineering group. They were comparing different performance. Another thing they actually looked at was in privacy preserving data analytics was homomorphic encryption, which is a sort of technique for doing that. So all kinds of interesting things to look at. I started out in the Turing with my own project, was looking at secure enclaves for essentially making sure that you could run safe havens for processing private data. In the end, this turns out to be somewhat of a dead end on the hardware that Intel provide, but actually we now have a solution working on ARM processors. So I can talk to people about that if they're interested in secure enclaves. But we also, that also got redirected because we helped support safe haven processing of a lot of healthcare data during the pandemic through the middle of last year. And there's a connection with a very cool project in Oxford run by Ben Goldacre called Open Safely, which deals with very large amounts, sort of 20 million people, patient electronic health records securely. Nobody ever sees an individual record, but they do lots of very nice statistics and machine learning. Current project, somebody else mentioned Trustworthy, and we absolutely buy into that. If you're going to do useful things for government and private sector, then trustworthiness is important. We have a project in the Turing, but funded by the Gates Foundation, looking at trustworthy digital identity. And this is important because it can help onboard people who normally don't have access to a number of resources, but you want to make sure that you don't then enable all kinds of bad behaviors. And so we're building systems to detect bad behavior in the use of identity in various different government and private sector use cases. And again, that has to provide transparency and privacy and be ethical. And that's kind of interesting because most things that you build as artifacts can also be misused. And we're even trying to figure out if we can build in safeguards against that, against sort of redirection of technologies, which is current thinking. And I mentioned already that the sort of trustworthiness shows up in this safe haven, for example, a project called Decovid, which looks at all kinds of data during the pandemic. We've done what Americans I think call dog fooding, which we use machine learning on topics and people in the Turing and the collaborators. We did a big bibliometric study of all the work going on and of all the authors and the networks. So we draw the graphs of people, and we're kind of still working on that. We're going to open source the tools for that, which we've used in other domains, but we thought we'd be interested to see what fraction of NeurIPS papers are actually showing up from us and our collaborators. And it'd be fun to do that across all of Europe, I think would be useful. International collaboration is just getting going, I think, because we were, this is my last slide, by the way, so I'm going to wrap up in a second. But we were somewhat stalled by Brexit, sorry, not my idea, but more so by the pandemic in reality. But we are very open to collaboration, and as you heard, we are signed up to collaborating across Europe as much as possible and across the world. The other thing is I was asked to mention startups. We actually have a couple of spin-outs from the Turing, both started by students, in fact, which is very interesting, people finishing their PhDs, one called IKVA, which is a very fast document comparison system, which works across any languages, which is pretty neat. So you can compare something in Arabic with something in Norwegian, I guess I haven't tried, but definitely English and Arabic. And another company which actually is a recommender for open source solutions, which basically is pretty neat, called Quine. And the other thing that started around the same time as the Turing is an umbrella company called Cognition X, which was started by folks with a long track record of large successful startups. And this is an umbrella company because it links all the other startups that they can find in AI and machine learning in the UK. And it has an annual festival called CogX, where they have several days, typically in London, where they take over a large area of London and have talks and demonstrations and showcases and so on. That's really interesting because they recently identified that the UK AI sector is now around 30 billion pound, euro, dollar sector, and growing at around 2 billion a year. Certainly the two startups from the Turing that I mentioned are only on the order of several million, but they're in sort of second round. But that means, of course, that there are hundreds and hundreds of companies, which is very interesting. And of course, all have to have markets that are bigger than the local market is not sufficient to support that. We have some ideas for increasing the rate of startups, including having competitions where we would donate seed money for one person for a year to just work on getting the case ready to go to venture capitalists, and staff contract flexibility, which in Cambridge we enjoy, where you can take a year paid leave and a year unpaid leave to do a startup, and nobody thinks that's funny, and that works very well in Cambridge with many companies that have gone very successfully large. ARM, I think, is probably the obvious one everyone's heard of, and London in the UK is pretty much enjoys a good venture capital culture of people understanding what's what, and actually often saying no, but giving very good advice. So when you go back a year later, they say yes. So I think that's very very Nordic sounding to me, listening to the other speakers. So that's the end of what I wanted to say. I'm happy to get emails later, or maybe meet people on the Gather setup later on if people have questions.
Thank you so much, John. That was great. In the old days, we just row a boat over to UK. It was easy and fast, and now it's even easier and faster. We just have to get out of the pandemic. Thank you also to Klaus and Trym, and of course Minister Nikolai Astrup. We're now on time and entering the second part of the program. This part is a panel discussion, but before we move to that, I would like to put your attention to the following. The European Commission has put forward a proposed regulation and revised coordination plan on AI. And Claire has made a survey, and we would like you to participate in it. So you will find a link to the survey on the chat now. So please just help us by taking the survey. That would be great. Yeah, help us. Now to the next part. This will be fun. We have collected a great panel to discuss the following question: how can we develop an effective AI innovation ecosystem in Europe? Now, I will introduce. I will just give the names of the panel participants, and when I do that, you turn on the camera and you introduce yourself a little bit more thoroughly, but keep it fairly short. So, Anita Schjølbrede, can you introduce yourself?
I will. Hi, everyone.
Hey, good to see you.
It's good to be here. My name is Anita. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Iris AI. We are a almost 6-year startup building an NLP system for scientific text understanding. So tools for academics, but especially also corporate R&D departments to navigate scientific literature and patents and internal documents better.
Great, Anita. Yeva Martin-Knaita.
Yes, hello everyone.
Hello, Yeva. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me. So very short, my name is Yeva. I am head of analytics and AI team in Telenor Research. I'm also sitting in the board at Telenor Denmark, and also have a position in GSMA Ethno AI task force, where I'm currently leading it in one of the largest, I'm the largest actually, telco association. What we do in Telenor, very briefly, we developing machine learning applications for network optimization, the big part of our business, and also increasingly more and more customer-facing AI. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you, Yeva. Ola Turudbakken.
Hi, Martin. Hi, everybody. Hi, I'm Ola Turudbakken. I'm SVP of Systems at Graphcore, and also General Manager of the Norwegian brand of Graphcore. So Graphcore, what is Graphcore? So Graphcore is basically a startup funded in 2016. So we are building a processor and systems specifically optimized for AI and machine learning. So we have raised $750 million in venture capitals. Our main offices are in UK and Oslo, Norway. And we also have offices in Asia, China, and US.
Excellent, Ola. Ingvar Ugland, where are you?
Hi. So I'm Ingvar Ugland. I'm head of New Tech Lab in DNB, and with the innovation unit in DNB that is the most runs the most future-directed and technology-driven innovation. We have office in Oslo, in San Francisco downtown, and a little bit further down in the valley in Palo Alto. So we're just across the Bay Bridge to Berkeley, and literally across the lawn from our Palo Alto office to Stanford. My background is from mathematics in NTNU, and I've done a few startups and scale-ups, and also a long tenure at Microsoft. What we do in the lab is that we believe that the future is already here. It's just very unevenly distributed, and all the technologies that we look at, we assume that they follow exponentiality, and that means we need to imagine the impossible. So we strive to have the knowledge to understand what is possible, but also not limit ourselves to what we currently believe is possible. So we, in a world where we have never known as much as we know today about how little we know tomorrow, we embrace uncertainty through rapid experimentation, and we do that by failing faster than anyone else. That is our superpower. And because in our world, for every stairway to heaven, there's 1,000 highways to hell.
That's excellent, Ingvar. Jan Bormans, please, where are you?
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me. So my name is Jan Bormans. I'm CEO of the European Startup Network. We are a not-for-profit startup, not-for-profit organization based in Brussels. We are a membership-based organization. We have national startup associations as members. We typically do three things. We unify our recommendations towards policymakers, mainly the European Commission. We exchange best practices amongst ourselves, and we also pilot new ways of collaborating.
Wonderful. Well, I should introduce myself. I haven't done that. So this is the round of introduction. My name is Morten Ergens, and I actually worked in AI since 1988. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I started an AI-based decision support system company in Canada that delivers decision support system for the oil and gas sector, which I'm kind of I'm conflicted about today. But anyway, that's the way it is. And I'm one of the initiators to CLAIR and also to NORA. I'm sitting on the board of both those networks, and I'm dean at Christiania University College, and I'm also an advisor to the rectorship at Oslo Met. So that's me. And now we're ready to go. And I would start with you, Ola. Graphcore has created a completely new processor, the Intelligent Processing Unit, IPU, and it's specifically designed for AI. So I find that fascinating itself. It's not only that developers can run machine learning models much faster, but it also lets AI researchers do entirely new type of work, not possible using current technologies. According to your press material, I would add, but I won't doubt it. And this could be of great interest for AI labs across the world and in Europe. But Europe has some of the most innovative regions in the world, Ola. But still, it seems that some other regions grow their AI industry faster. Do you agree? And how do you believe that Europe can improve to generate more companies, jobs, innovations, products, and services in this economy? Ola.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, I think you're definitely right that the innovation across Europe that is great. When it comes to and if you look at AI in particular, I mean, in some of the key talent of AI that has actually come out of Europe. The godfather of AI, Geoff Hinton, he's Demis Hassabis of DeepMind, John LeCun, and even the Norwegian Dag Kitlaus, all came out of Europe and through research centers and universities there. So I don't think the issue is about talent or innovation. But if you look at these people now, they are all working out of the US. And part of the reason, I think, that is also access to infrastructure and access to compute. I mean, if you look at the way that, the phase one of machine learning, that was basically very simple supervised learning in which algorithms were able to recognize a cat from a dog. Today, and I'm sure that Anita is going to talk more about that, now we have unsupervised learning in which you're actually able to understand context out of a text, which has applications in wide areas of discipline. The next phase, I think we were going to probably approach more of a superhuman AI. And as we go there, what we see is that the model sizes, the algorithms, they are going through an explosion in size, not only the complexity of the algorithms, but also the data that needs to feed them. So, a key point for Europe to be innovative in this space, together with China and together with the big American hyperscalers, that is to provide access to basically computing infrastructure. Because access to computing infrastructure and access to data, that is basically going to drive a lot of the innovation that we see here. Long answer, but hopefully it addressed some of your points.
Sure, we'll probably hear from the others on this as well, but I'd like to jump to Ingvar. When I was young, I had a checkbook with the logo of your predecessor of your bank on, and that was my it was in those days where my father would put on a suit if he went to the bank, and banks were not exactly forward-leaning institutions. But look at DNB, the Norwegian bank. You are not only voted one of Norway's most innovative companies, you actively seek out and create entrepreneurial growth in Norway. And you, Ingvar, head DNB's new tech lab. Just the name in itself is pretty cool. So you're doing a lot to increase the culture of entrepreneurship. Are you succeeding? Have you seen any differences in entrepreneurial activities over the last 5 years? And to which degree do you see AI as a driving force in this?
Yeah, speaking of checkbooks, we say it as a joke that I think it's actually true, but one of the most frequent features in US online banks is order new leaflet of checks. So in comparison to a lot of the banks over there, we come pretty far in a pretty advanced digital society. But DNB is 199 years old. I think some of the software we have is almost as old, it seems. But I think we changed more the last 10 years than the previous 189. And I think that there was a shift with it was basically, let me see if I can remember the date, May 30th, 2015, which was 6 months before that, because that was the launch of VIPs. And that was a game changer, defining moment in DNB where the CEO at the time, Rune Bjerke, he basically said that, okay, screw all the classic decision making in this bank. Now we're just going to do it. I know we have to do it. And he put down a small team and understood, okay, you figure it out, you report directly to me, and ideally not report to me, just do it. You have 6 months. And because that was such a success, 6 months is still a long time, but it's not in the traditional banking world. And that's set aside a totally new way of working in the bank, like with a management style, which he coined let go management, more a startup type of way, smaller teams, autonomous teams with a lot of accountability that comes with that freedom. And that kind of spun off like the start of a culture that we're still building. And it's nice to be recognized as one of the most innovative companies in the country. I think that's a good status report on the journey we're on. I think that the farther we get, the more we understand that we're far away from reaching any goal, if there's any goal to this. But there's also a change in mindset that we, I think my impression is, before I joined DNB, that DNB used to be pretty arrogant. Now there's a kind of a humbleness to, we understand that there's more smart people on the outside than on the inside, and a lot of the innovation power is within startups. So we systematically work with startups and with academia, as mentioned several times. And AI definitely a part of that, indeed. And also we, like I mentioned in my introduction, my team has presence in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, and further down in the Valley, which is exclusively because we wanna like we don't leave serendipity to chance in my team. So we want to have these coincidental collisions with startups when we're on the ground there, because my team is also set up kind of like a startup. We're a small team. You can feed us with 2 pizzas and a kebab, and that makes it much easier to collaborate with startups. And that's because we want to do more of the innovation work with startups, which is also why we designed it, for making it easier not to go through the traditional big bank procurement nightmare that will kill any and drain a startup for all enthusiasm just by the procurement process.
I noticed you said that before you joined DNB, it was very arrogant. So no, there's a big change because you joined DNB. There's no causality, I'm sorry. I haven't used cash in 9 years, except when I go on vacation. And I kind of think that Norway is in many ways a lab on nation scale, because the infrastructure and the digitization is not only something that happens in a lab or in a company, it's nationwide for the whole country. And that might in many ways create an opportunity for us, for Norway, to become actually a pilot arena for very interesting approaches. But you didn't answer my question, Ingvar. Has you seen a change in, do you see an uptake in the number of technology-driven startups and scale-ups?
Like in general?
Yes, in the last, let's say the last 5 years.
Well, indeed, I don't have numbers on that, but my impression is that, but also because we expose ourselves so much more to it, and it becomes a much more part of the way we do innovation.
It looks like that just from looking at investment numbers over the last 10 years, that there is a change going on, and it's underneath the surface. And it's not very visible in the political debate or in the reality for people. And suddenly we will be aware, I guess. I would like to move to Anita. Anita, your company, Iris.ai. You mentioned that in your introduction. You have developed an AI-driven product for scientific text understanding. And I believe this will be fantastically interesting for universities, as it could, I guess it could accelerate both research and education. Do you find universities forward-leaning partners for startups? I can add, how do you think that, just like a second question, you can balance this. How should the European AI ecosystem thrive in your view? Where do you believe we are in 2-3 years? Okay, not gonna. That's 3 questions. There you go, Anita.
Three small questions.
Yeah, you can do that.
No, I mean, if I start from the latter, like where are we going to be in 2 to 3 years? Like there is so much that have changed since we started Iris back in 2015, right? We started summer of 2015 as a Norwegian company, but with a cross-European funder team. So we've been kind of scattered all over Europe for the past 6 years. And there's a few kind of key things in that, right? One is that we set out to prove that you could very well do your fundraising and kind of build your company from Europe with European VCs. And I will say that we dramatically disproved ourselves, because the fundraising in Europe was ridiculously hard. And especially so when you cater to universities and you sell to academic institutions, And the VC landscape is just like, where's the money? Where's the banks you're going to sell to? Where's the pharma companies you're going to sell to, right? So like academia is not a cool market. Apparently, we think it's the coolest thing ever, but that's us. So that was the first thing. Now, also in 2015, when we started approaching, like I know that the AI lab up at NTNU that spoke earlier, we talked to the people founding it like a year before it was founded. And like there was nothing going on in Norway at that point, right? I mean, there's GraphCore, I guess, like there early 2016 was it, right? But we were like there was like a little bit of meltwater things happening on some data science things, but like we were the only AI company we could see in Norway, and we tried to get partners, and we found some cool researchers doing some NLP stuff at NTNU, and then the tech transfer office kind of made sure that didn't happen. And you know, there was nothing, right? And it was really hard to get started. Now, 5 years later, 6 years later, we have raised, you know, 5 million or so. So we're you know, we have some money to play with and keep developing with. But we're also seeing like this radical change in the market, right? Like now we don't have even if we're still a small team, we don't have a problem finding universities to collaborate, right? Like we're collaborating with Stockholm and UCL and Oxford and a number of other institutions. We're seeing kind of these AI labs and organizations like Claire, like Nora. There's just so much more happening, right? So, and this has kind of sped up, is that the word? Radically over the last few years. So we're seeing kind of this boom and explosion. And if we get back to your question on the university side, yes, on the collaboration side, most definitely, it's a lot easier. I will say, and this just comes from my perspective as a startup that actually has, like we're 25 people and we have 5 researchers on the team. We're kind of in some ways a little unique on that front, because there's going to be a lot of, I'm going to do AI startups today that don't really have a lot of AI. There was a survey in 2018, which I know is outdated by now, but where, you know, 40% of AI startups had absolutely nothing to do with AI, right? Because, and their valuations was expected to be like, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40% higher because they were an AI company. And so I think there's been also that kind of, while there is so much more collaboration, so much more excitement, so many more networks, et cetera, there's also all that much more bubbly situations going on. But I think, I mean, yes, I don't know if that was a big conclusion or just the trends that we've observed. Yes, it's absolutely possible to collaborate with universities. You know, I think we have a big advantage in that we have in-house researchers. We do our own research. So collaborating with research departments or research groups is a lot easier because we know how they work, right? We work in the same way, even though we also kind of build and commercialize the product. So we have an advantage there. And I think there's definitely the culture clashes that goes on when you're an AI startup that you know may or may not understand what research and science is all about. We're also cheating in that way because we're dealing with research on the content side as well. So I think that is sometimes a challenge to kind of merge the two worlds, because there's a very big difference between doing fundamental research and moving fast and breaking things, as Ingvar also said. And I think merging the two, especially in the field of AI, we have to be able to merge the two, right? And how do we do that? And how do we do that in an ethical way and get the right funding for it? It's a complex question.
I think I would like to challenge. There's a model today that is the model that is in the backbone of the spine of many, both in academia, in the public, the sphere, in the discussions, is that innovation is a push model, linear push model. And with that, I mean that, okay, during the Second World War, the universities went from being separated from the rest of reality to become a part in what is called a triple helix. You know, the government started to push money into the universities to collaborate with industry, and industry was huge, big companies like IBM, and they got $1 billion for creating the first computer and things like that. And this model is still there. It's you know, at the universities they talk about collaborating with industry, and they have a technology transfer office. And the idea is that universities think out brilliant solutions, and then you have a tech transfer office that transfers it over to a very grateful commercial sector who productize that, creates it, turn it into products and services. But it's not the way the modern economy works. But everything is set up for this. We need to create ecosystem that at least you have more members of that system than 3. It's not only academia, government, and industry. You have startups, investors, you have other actors, and they work together in a non-linear fashion. And nobody knows where the first idea came from and how it moved through the system. The point is, you have a non-linear system, and you need to fuel it in such a way that great things come out of it. And maybe you don't fully understand how the great things came out of it because it's complex. It's back and forth, it's messy, but that's what you need. And one thing we need now is density, putting people together. And that's why Claire wants to do whatever we can to create more dense ecosystems across Europe and create what we can call a virtual ecosystem that can connect to the physical ones. But I believe that there is way too many that has this old model in there. And if you ask, so no, I got on a rant here. I'm going to come back. I'm going to go back to where we are going. So thank you. This was very interesting. Jan, the European Startup Network, that's fascinating. It represents thousands of startups across Europe. And as I'm saying, not both national governments and in the minds of many, and also great parts of the big parts of the Commission, there is this startups don't fit into the model. It's not there. It's like, yeah, what is this? It's just messing things up. We don't understand it. They want the SAPs, the Siemens and the Philipses to come on board and show the way. You know a lot more of what moves European startups and the development of realities of startups and innovation ecosystem across Europe. What do startups across Europe think the priorities should be relating to AI ecosystems?
Yes, thanks for the relevant question. Huh? Before answering it directly, I want to say that indeed ecosystems are increasingly important for the success of startups. At the time that the individual startup was successful just because they were alone and great guys, this has completely disappeared. So what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is where you have, as you said, the critical mass of different players, and the players are indeed very varied. So you need critical mass of smart money, you need talent, you need academics. And this can be offline, this can be online, as we have seen. And I liked very much when Ingar said that you shouldn't leave things up to coincidence. And I think indeed in such ecosystems, you should arrange meetings by accident in a systematic way. So because what you learn from peers is very important, and also very important is the role models in an ecosystem. We asked, as part of our European Startup Monitor, we asked startups with who they typically collaborate, and it turns out that they collaborate mostly with SMEs, then with large corporates, then with other startups, then with universities, then with public institutions, and then with NGOs. I do realize my background is acting up. I apologize for that. I have no idea what's happening, but I hope the audience will not get distracted by that. So then coming back to your question, what is important for startups? And you mentioned that indeed also the policymakers typically don't know what kind of animal startups are. And so just in spring, Commissioner Maria Gabriel asked me to come up with an action plan that just summarized what is important for startups in Europe. And we did this together with 27 national startup associations. And in France, they went one step further and they specifically looked into what is needed for AI. And so my answer would be threefold. It falls in the category of financing, partnerships between startups and private and public players, and then the talent pipeline. We did realize, however, that even amongst ourselves, we have no clear and uniform definition about what a startup is, a scale-up is, a unicorn is, and this kind of thing. So we think one of the first things we need to do is to have a common language in Europe, and I mean Europe in the extended sense, to be able to also measure our progress, right? The ambition of European startups at this point is that we want to have a tenfold number of unicorns in 10 years' time per year. So I think we are ambitious. So coming back to what we think should happen, financing. Financing, well, in AI, in France, just before COVID, there was almost doubling of money being put by business angels into AI startups, where, as Anita mentioned, some of them were maybe not pure AI startups, but this is a huge success. But there is a limit to that success, because if you look at the real venture capital money, there is still 5 times more of smart money and VC money in the US. Whereas in Europe, we are very much hindered cross-border. There is not really a good approach. Also, if you want to IPO in Europe, it's much harder than doing so in the US. So with respect to financing, this is certainly concerns. We also are concerned about the fact that 1 out in 4 or 1 out in 5 investors in AI startups is American or Asian. Yeah? And so in the bigger picture, the concern that Europe could be seen as a tax-paid incubator for the US and Asia, this is of course concerning. So we are not saying to forbid it, but we would like to have clear rules and clear guidelines. Then, with respect to partnerships between startups and the private and public players, we are frustrated that, unlike in the US, they're in public procurement, which is, depending on the sector, up to 20% of the GDP. We have no preference, or we have no reserved share for startups, whereas this is different in the US. So we would like to make sure that a percentage of this public procurement goes to startups, especially in deep tech startups, right? In general, we also want to foster open innovation, but there the startups fear to be crushed by large corporations that have 10 times or 100 times bigger legal departments, etc. We also want the fostering of spin-offs, but there is a lot of frustration. That was also mentioned, I think, also in the chat, with the way some TTOs work, with the way universities are dealing with IP still in a way like 20 years ago. And sometimes this leads to universities sitting on a bunch of IP, and they are not the good instruments to bring this IP to the market. We are. So this brings me to the talent pipeline. It's clear that we have huge talent in AI in Europe. We should make sure not to use it to other continents, but we should also make sure that startups are being seen as a good working opportunity for them. And there's still a lot of things to do, I believe. But I think the red line through all I'm saying is that I think we should connect the players in ecosystems to make sure that we reach this critical mass. And certainly in Europe, this has to be cross-border. This is clear. There's no discussion about that. And connecting ecosystems can be done certainly also by connecting networks. So I think that, yeah, this kind of initiatives are super.
Well, thank you. Excellent. I will now move to Eva. I haven't talked with you yet, Eva. You know, Ola and Anita, their companies are digitally native. Not only that, they're AI native, but most companies, they are not. So if you look at Europe's non-AI native companies, well, they represent Europe's commercial might. Some of them, but not all. Some of them may need to develop some level of AI confidence. So do you think enough companies are doing that? Are they standing still? Are they slow? Are they running fast? Do we see a too slow uptake in Norway and in Europe? Eva.
Thanks, Martin. Well, I'm sitting, of course, in a company that is transforming as many other locomotives in Europe. I mean, we are both a demand and supply market for AI in Europe and many other continents. But if you ask me if we're doing enough of AI, my answer, absolutely not. It's not about AI, actually. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Are we doing enough seriously? Not. So, and it's irrespective if we are a big corporate, if we are a small company or a startup, or if we are a university. I don't think we do enough. Now, let me go now to a corporate world and give a perspective on it. You know, one of the big challenges that I see before we go to AI is still quite a low level of data readiness in these companies. I don't talk only about Telenor. I think the banks, the biggest telcos, the biggest energy companies, it's an ongoing process to get the data pipelines in place, to have the best tooling in place, to fight the legacy systems that we built for hundreds of years. And remember, I mean, we are successful companies. We should never forget that. We actually give credit to our shareholders. We earn money. So we actually pay taxpayers money. So we are successful. And I sometimes say that this is our problem. Because if we're not successful, then actually the urge for change would have been bigger. But we are. So here are my reflections on this low data readiness. So as I said, to me, it looks like we are now in the phase of demystifying AI, going from this exuberance, extreme mystification to pragmatism. In fact, what is critical for us now is to get data pipelines in place, to get the right technology in place, to get the right skill base. Ingvar said clearly there are many ways you can actually access talents. But this is a transformative process. I wouldn't say that we are fast enough. We should be faster. But this actually essentially change in our leadership mindset. Very much agree with you, Ingvar. It's about changing how our organizations kind of operate and learn. If we don't get there, I mean, we will be extremely challenged on working with startups, with working with bigger corporates, and with working with universities. I mean, we have an essential problem of low absorptive capacity internally. I mean, we're working on it. I'm very pragmatic here, but if we don't create that kind of minimal base of scaling our data and empowering our data internally, it's going to be not possible to work with startups in scaling mode. I don't believe that. So we need to get that internal capacity in place. And this is an ongoing process. So my conclusion to that, if we're doing enough, not, but we should look into what are we using AI for? I think Europe is super strong. I mean, it's strong on building technologies, but Europe is not that strong on using these technologies to solving problems that are critical for big corporates, for smaller companies. If we are not creating that link between sort of extremely great tech versus problem to solve in a kind of scalable manner, I don't think we have, I mean, we have a problem. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, Martin, but I mean, this is an ongoing change in the mindset. We're sitting on the ticking bomb, I think, here. Something has to happen. We are trying out different ways. We work with startup companies. We are spinning off our own. I mean, Telenor, for example, creates startups internally. We have as digital telco companies internally in our consortium with the only goal, try to fight us, try to outcompete us. Because if you manage to do it remotely, digital first, then there's something interesting we could invest in. And then similarly, we do invest in research. Our formula for bringing research to innovation is to have a dedicated research unit. That works for Telenor. This is why we created the Norwegian lab. This is how we bring those innovations from the labs, not only in Trondheim and elsewhere, to our company, to having a dedicated set of people that have incentives not only to create products, but also to bring research to product phase. If we don't have that kind of interface between research and research and business, then we certainly have a problem.
Thank you. It brings up something very important. One of the drives for the various European AI strategies is basically a reality that let me sidestep this. Why are we talking about this here today at the opening of the Norwegian office for Claire? And Claire started out as a very strong scientific movement, if you want, and a network of AI labs and research centers. Is very research oriented. And now we're sitting here talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. And the reality is that Europe's scientific base and scientific prowess and scientific ability in AI is waning. That's one thing, but we have been at the very top in the world, both in quantity and quality in science in AI. But for some reason, we have been very poor at turning this fantastic, which should be low-hanging fruit, should turn it into value for society, into products, into services, into jobs, why don't we just lift our shoulders and say, well, that's just one area. Europe can excel in luxury goods and other things. Well, now the concern across Europe in European parliaments and in the Commission is that technology defines the reality we live in. It will decide how we will live in the future, and AI is a particularly transformative technology. And you can say, I don't remember if it's Anita that said that, well, it's not about AI. Yes, it's not about AI, but AI is one of the really driving forces, and we can use it as an example, and we're using it as a driving force for our trying to change this. So we are discussing this because European science is dependent on a healthy European innovation arena. It's dependent on European companies stepping up and becoming more digitally native than what they are today. It's depending on the developments here. For some reason, we don't turn enough companies into value. And there is so much potential on this continent, in Norway and in Europe. And the Nordic countries are among the most innovative in the world. So here there should be some opportunities. And that's why we are discussing it. And that's why the scientific community in Europe steps up and say, let's work together. I would like to ask the panelists if you at this moment have seen any questions or comments in the chat that you would like to comment on or respond to or answer to.
There was one that came up that I thought was interesting, that was directed at me, but I think there might be others who will have opinions about it too. And that's, the question was something along the lines of, because of all of this hype, right? Because of the, as I mentioned, this 2018 survey by MMC Ventures, where everyone and their mom wants to do AI startups, right? Because of the valuations. Are we facing the next AI winter, right? Which is a classical question. Are we overhyping it so much? And I think, one of the things for me is that, yes, it might be an overhyped market, but we're also starting to see some seriously good results, right? And I think we are moving from an age where if you say, "Ooh, I'm going to sprinkle AI on this and it's going to be great," and we've now moved into an age where you're like, "Here's the ROI on this system, right? Here is the X% time speed up to do a 78 times speed up to do a literature review, or like you can do 2 months of manual labor in 4 minutes, right? And you can actually measure it. You can measure the precision and recall, and it's better than human." And the fact that we are getting to that point now, I think, means that we might see a lowering of valuations of AI companies because AI is something everyone should do, right? But I don't think we're going to see, oh no, this AI thing was bullshit and we're not going to do it ever again, because there's too much value delivered, right? So there might be less of a craze, but I think we're moving into the next space where it's simply like, I mean, in some ways, a friend of mine used to say that like artificial intelligence is only artificial intelligence until we actually have it in front of us and it works, and then it's just software, right? And it works and it's just a tool. So I think that's the thing as well. We're moving into an age or an era or a couple of years where it's just tools that make our everyday lives a little bit more efficient, right? No one thinks about having AI on their phone for their images, right? It's just Siri finding all the pictures that I have on my phone. It's not magic, right?
Yes, AI is not AI anymore when it works. It's just there.
Exactly.
Well,
it's not that smart, right?
Ola, I would like to ask you, GPT-3, is a well-known language model that can be used to produce human-like text. It's fascinating what it can do. But it's also one of the largest models in the world. So could the next one come out of Europe? What do you think? You can answer that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this also partly came out on the chat. So for the people on the call, I mean, GPT-3, that is more like coined as the world's largest model. It came out of OpenAI's. I mean, basically Elon Musk's funded the think tank out of San Francisco, and on a conventional or an AI accelerator today, it typically takes a couple of 100 years to train that model. And I think what we will see over the I think what we or the aim in the industry, that is, or a goal that might be to get into a superhuman type model. I mean, ultimately, a safe driver that needs to understand how a human thinks. That is scary, but at the same time, that is where we're heading. And if you look at GPT-3 and compare that to a human brain that contains around 100 trillions of synapses, neurons. So that is a factor of 1,000x larger than GPT-3 today. So I think, and I think that goes back to my earlier comment, about infrastructure, and that was also raised on the chat. I think one thing that we should be thinking about, that is to make AI infrastructure available to researchers at startups. I mean, there are definitely, through Euro HPC, there is, and through, more like local, Uninet Sigma that is funding the national computing resources. I mean, there is more like starting to become cloud-like, access to computational resources. But I think that is definitely something that government can help to make available. Same thing on data itself. I mean, one of the great competitive advantages that Europe have is digital data. I mean, take Norwegian health records or cancer records. I mean, you have the clinical data from the 50s. Same thing in lots of telco and in energy sectors, and data is more like also gold in terms of AI and compute. So I think access to compute, making that available and making it cheap available, and also access to data with all that implies. GDPR is one aspect to it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ola. I think Ingvar, when you listen to your colleagues here in this debate, what do you think? Have you heard something that you disagree with, or is AI the transformational technology said to be? What do you think, Ingvar?
There's a lot of good points, and you know, we often say that America innovates, China duplicates, and Europe regulates, and Europe regulates with good intentions. Not always. Will the regulation serve the intention? I hope we're going to do that with the regulation of AI, because there's really fundamentally better ethics behind that, I think, personally, than in both with what we see in the US or in China. And when it comes to the hype, I think this is a classic example of we overestimate the impact short term, but significantly underestimate the longer term effects. And I think when it comes to AI, we put in motion something that we cannot stop, which is also something that kind of concerns me, especially because we put so much data in the hands of a couple of handfuls company in the Bay Area, and similarly in China. But so again, as you mentioned in the beginning, Morten, Norway as a nation, as a lab, I fully agreed, and as was just mentioned with the kind of the public records that is available of high trust, high quality. Last year, when the pandemic kicked in, my team was engaged in building this compensation scheme on assignment from Ministry of Finance, and building like a self-service solution in 3 weeks, and for tens of thousands of companies and billions of Norwegian kroners, could only be done because of all the digitally available, highly trustworthy public records across both private, like banking and government, and the trust that we have. So I fully agree to that. What I would like to see that I don't see as much in Norway, I don't know about all of Europe, but that I see works really well, and that I see in California that I miss here, is that it is not just the amount of capital, it's the nature of the capital. And when we talk about venture capital, I think it's the Norwegian word is much better, risikokapital, which basically means risk capital. And when I mention like, it's not just a double rock and roll quote, this idea about for every stairway to heaven there's 1,000 highways to hell. There's something about the nature of the capital that really dares to invest in things that are super risky and spray, don't pray. That's what I really miss in Norway. Those places I've seen in Europe, that is fundamentally a success factor for the ecosystem to succeed in Silicon Valley or the Bay Area.
Yeah, my experience from Vancouver, and that's where I started my company, was that the reason it was taking off there was that there had been a generation of successful tech companies that got bought up, and you know, after 2 years of rebuilding your house and going on your yacht, you start to get bored. These people transformed the startup landscape in the western part of Canada and in other parts of North America, and we need to see the same, I believe, in Europe. We cannot try to replicate that through governmental means. There is some ways of risk being distributed in this way that is important. But we are getting to the end now, and I have a closing question, and you guys, you need to answer very shortly and very to the point. Before the question, I will just remind you that Claire has collected 400 of Europe's research labs and research groups and research institutes in AI in a network. And we believe that this network is very valuable, potentially very valuable for European industry and European startups. So we are developing an innovation network, and we will start to really boost it up to become to the same level as the research network. So we believe that we can get high value out of connecting, making this network of scientists available across Europe for startups, for industry, etc. What do you think that Claire would need to do to become as useful for European industry and startups as possible, and for the transformation that, for instance, Eva was talking about? Can you give me a very short and quick answer? What should Claire do for you? And I start with Ola.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll make it again very short. I think I'll just reiterate what I've been mentioning a few times. I think access to infrastructure, make computational infrastructure easily access. I think there is going to be an explosion there to make that. Look at Euro HPC, look at national labs, make that available. I think because and then look at how can you make data available. I think those two things will stimulate a lot of new things. There is stuff happening. The data fabric in Norway. This is one part, but make that available. Access to capital, yes, that has been. I agree with some of the previous comments on that. But at the same time, there is. I think that has been improved a lot throughout Europe.
Eva, short and sweet, to the point. What can we do? What should Claire do?
So one thing I think what I would expect is dedicated program for leadership change in big corporates. How can you help us to lead that change towards digital and data-driven innovation internally? We're not having enough capacity and bandwidth to do it alone. So I would really call Claire to look into some talent upskilling, reskilling type of programs helping us to move the needle. Thank you.
We are considering building on Nora.startup to create something like Claire.startup or where we are. Here's an example. If you ask a professor somewhere in Europe, you ask her for years to start collaborating with industry, that's what they're told all the time. And in the end, she will cave in and say, okay, I'm going to contact industry. And what would she do? She would call a brand name she knows, Telenor or Philips or Siemens. She doesn't know anything about the tens and thousands of fantastic, interesting startups and smaller companies. So by creating a Claire.startup that connects, that makes this meeting possible, I believe we can transform the way scientists work with startups. So this is an addition to my question. Anita, I'm over to you. What can we do for you? What should Claire do?
Well, I kind of wanted to give the same answer as Eva did, because I think it's very symptomatic that the two big corporates that are represented here today is in banking and telco, because even as far back perhaps, or as still like as struggling as you put into words that you are with like the legacy organization, you are like light years ahead of what's our target clients among the corporate players, right? So we're targeting chemistry, we're targeting some kind of older engineering companies, and they're just way behind. And so I think that education, that leadership training that like, well, if, what does the future look like, right? What do we do? Where do we start? And I think there's kind of, because yeah, like access to venture capital would be great, but like if we can get our clients even more on board with the future and seeing the future, as Ingvar also pointed out earlier, to like see the big picture long term and understanding what we need to implement today to get there. If we can get like the bigger, older industry, and I know that like 200 years old, sure, but like you're still way ahead, right? So if we can get that older, more, still super conservative industry part of this and connect that to startups and iteration and innovation and scientists and all of that, I think that's really important and powerful as well. And just speaking from where we're standing today, that's what takes us the most time and effort. We're becoming educational consultants as much as we're just selling our software tools. And that would be super helpful if Claire could contribute with that.
It's okay that there are, of course, a lot of non-digitally native and non-AI native companies in the world and in Europe, but the leadership can't be anymore. The leadership needs to be digitally native. The leadership needs to be AI native in many situations. So we need to change all the CEOs across Europe. That's a good program. Work on that or change your mindset. Ingvar, the short question: what can Claire do to accelerate this?
Also, just to answer your question about to respond to your comment about academia, I think go look at Stanford, replicate that model. If you're a professor at Stanford and you don't have a couple of startups on the side, you're basically a joke. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but there's a lot of truth to that. What can you do? Like bringing together things on a pan-European level is great for gravity and impact reasons. Just make sure that you don't get bureaucratic. You need to keep high pace, startup style ecosystem speed. Again, to reiterate the thing about high risk capital, if you can't find them in Europe, go to California and ask them to come to invest in Europe. And also, I'm an optimist. I believe in the long run that those with the best ethics will win. There's a lot of good intention in the EU regulation, but they're not always fit for purpose. Make sure to chase them. Make sure that they get it right. That's the way to win long term. So keep chasing them on that.
Well, I think the last one on this list then is Jan. What should Claire do?
Yes, I will try to be very concise. So just to say, I think it's important that in Europe we have digital sovereignty. When we don't have it, such as in cloud technology, is giving a lot of problems for our companies. It's giving a lot of problems for startups. For AI, it's not yet too late. So we can still have the complete value chains from academics to IPO within Europe. And Claire, in my opinion, can be one of the glues that keep this value chain together. And maybe as a first step, you could be the AI single point of contact for startups.
Excellent. That's great. So we're finished with the panel debate. Thank you so much. We are going to the third part now, which is still exciting. As we move to this last part, this event, where we have two brilliant video contributions, we would like to, first of all, encourage you all to participate in the survey. So post the link to the survey again, so it's on top. We would also like to launch our digital village, and I would like to give the word for a short introduction to B. Would you please tell us what's going to happen?
Hi, everybody. Thank you again for attending our launch day. Thank you to panelists, keynotes, and all the audience. We have also made a virtual village for you guys to enjoy with many virtual booths, including Telenor, Simula Consulting, Nora, Iris.ai. So please click on the link, make your own avatar, walk around in the room with using your arrows, use the X to click and engage with the various booths. And just enjoy, but also remember to listen to the last presentations that we will soon set in motion. Thank you.
Excellent. So now to the third session, but you know, you can join the Gathertown and multitask. You can follow the presentations at the same time. I will begin with a video about Valeria Naumova. She's director at Simula Consulting, and she will present key factors for successful machine learning projects and companies. And the second video following after her is by Andreas Liebel. He is the co-founder of the European AI startup landscape. So these are two interesting, very interesting videos. Thank you so much. Let's roll the film.
A new tech consulting company established by Simula Research Lab and which aims to deliver advances in digitalization to companies in private and public domain on a commercial basis. And today I would like to talk about essentially successful factors for AI and machine learning projects for companies. And specifically, I will talk about how to find as an investor who create the next DeepMind. So essentially, if we all know that AI is one of the most disruptive technologies, and there are a lot of investors who are searching for new DeepMind and investing in a lot of AI-related companies. So what are the keys? What make the AI companies so attractive, and which companies are getting on the top 10 AI most funded startups, as reflected here? And as you can see here, unfortunately, US and China are the only ones which are getting the most funded AI companies. How we in Nordics can make the way there, at least higher on the list. Of course, these numbers looks extremely exciting, getting SenseTime getting $3.3 billion as an investment, and all others getting a lot of money. But what does the partner research says that 85% of AI projects ultimately fail. And today, we'd like to look a bit deeper. What are the challenges, why the companies fails, and what are the success factors which bring the AI startups to growth, development, and largest investments to this top 10 AI list. I already introduced myself, but I just want to say a few words about myself. I have a PhD in applied mathematics and machine learning from Austrian Academy of Sciences. And after that, I have been working as a researcher and a consultant at Simula. I have been involved in, among other things, in technology due diligence processes together with investment companies and private equity, trying to understand the technology of many different startups and medium-sized companies and understand what are the opportunities for growth for those companies. So I would like to essentially share my experience in this, in my journey, actually. So if we try to summarize the 4 success factors for machine learning projects, or essentially machine learning companies or products, we can say that there is essentially 4 factors. First of all, is the business value. It's the ability to obtain business value from deploying machine learning and not other simpler alternative models. Data, ability to collect, store, and quickly access large volumes of data. People, ability to develop and deploy efficient and meaningful models and have everything in-house or access to those people. And the last one is infrastructure, ability to process, collect the data at a reasonable cost, and ability to scale. And now I would like to look a bit in more details in each of these milestones or keys for successful machine learning projects. So if you look at the business relevance and business value, essentially we see that 55% of companies never deploy machine learning models. So they develop, but they never get into production. And another numbers say that it takes around 1 month for deploying the machine learning. So how essentially we can develop those models and methods and products which are relevant for users and which are getting deployed and which are also deployed at a much faster pace. So these are exactly the business values which one needs to look when thinking about and strategizing on developing of the product. So what we have seen in many of the tech due diligence and also discussing with other companies, that there should be a user-centric product strategy. the company has to perform interview surveys to define the human needs. And what we also see is that there is a lot of areas where essentially machine learning can be useful and can bring the real values. And those are specifically areas with inefficiencies and repetitive human processes. Essentially, optimization and automatization of workflows and problems. And if you can find those and implement your solution, then there will be quite a lot of investors and clients searching for obtaining these solutions. At the same time, as mentioned, one always have to look at the machine learning impact versus user impact and not trying to invent and bring in machine learning when it's not needed just because it's a buzzword. The second success factor, and one of the most important success factors, is the data availability and model testing. Working with companies, we see that a lot of companies underestimate the data needs and duration of data collection process and labeling those processes. And if you look roughly, we can say that 75% of development time spent on data collection, labeling, integration, and cleaning, and only 25% is essentially model development and deployment. And as you can see here, there is a lot of factors one needs to look while analyzing the data access, like data size, quality, existing pipeline, GDPR, and privacy, as well as interpretability. I really like the quote by Andrew Ng, who is a famous machine learning course author and co-founder of Coursera and founder of Google Brain, who actually says that there is plenty of open source models that can be used to build machine learning and address problem. But what really needs to be customized is the data. And he finds that for many companies, in order to help enterprise efficiently, they need to get the data to fit into an open source model. And that's essentially the key to unlocking the value for that business. So by developing and creating a new project or a new company, it's important to understand what type of data is available and whether there is an access to label data for training and validation, whether there is an infrastructure to actually utilize and supply the data for models. As you can see on this figure, machine learning code and model is a very tiny, small piece in the whole infrastructure of machine learning development and deployment. The third factor, a success factor for companies, is of course team and the talents for machine learning development and deployment. It's predicted by Gartner that 80% of companies will face production delays due to lack of collaboration and IT process immaturity. And 60% of companies don't have required competencies within the team to develop and deploy their models. And this is an issue which has been discussed quite a lot in many meetings. And this is one of the issues addressed by Nora and also Claire by increasing collaboration between AI researchers in Europe and Norway. But I think it's important to emphasize that we are not only looking for data scientists, but there is different roles involved in the development process. And there is data engineers and machine learning ops engineers, which also have to be present. And this essentially positions have to be also trained and educated, which is not taking so much attention. And the last focus, or the last point I would like to focus is essentially infrastructure costs and scalability. Of course, we all know that training neural networks and deep learning models requires a lot of computational resources. And it's predicted that by 2023, the amount of cloud-based AI will increase 5-fold, and AI will be on the top of cloud services. And 30% of allocated computational resources are utilized by companies, less than 30%, meaning that people are paying a lot for resources, but they don't know how efficiently utilize them. And also focusing on who runs the model and when. We also have been seeing that, especially in tech DDs, that people are trying to essentially buy a lot of resources, but they're underutilized, resulting in large payments. So this is also important to understand how to efficiently use infrastructure and resources to enable scalability at the same time, saving the costs. So those was a quick run and overview of key success factors for machine learning project and startups. And at Simula Consulting, essentially, we are providing full type of services focusing on technology development, technology advice, data analytics, and tailored courses, which also help companies, AI startups, and other companies to utilize their data and extract real value from their data, either by using our technology advice and expertise services or by consulting with us and understanding their needs and getting recommendations on which type of services will be needed and infrastructure. I'd like to thank you for your attention and hope this presentation gave you some additional thoughts for thinking on how to bring machine learning to production and succeed, and also maybe motivated you for considering of creating startups or machine learning project. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello from my side. My name is Andreas Liebe, and I'm one of the managing directors of Unternehmertum and the head of the Applied AI initiative in Germany. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about AI startup ecosystems, about what we did with the European AI startup landscape, why we actually created that landscape, and what's the story behind that. And as I said, I'm part of Unternehmertum. Unternehmertum is a non-profit organization that has the goal to support innovation and startups to grow in Germany. And with that, obviously, we're very much interested in really helping them to become successful. And with that, we created about 4 years ago Applied AI. Applied AI is a large initiative that has the goal to accelerate the adoption of AI. And how can you do that better than by matching startups with existing AI solutions with the companies? And back at that time in 2018, we had some challenges on the startup side, because at that time, many startups said and claimed that they are using AI, but they actually didn't. They just said this because that drove really the valuation of the startups in the first funding rounds. On the other hand, you had companies that really didn't understand what AI is about and how you can really use it. So it was really hard for both players to actually connect to each other and to really get started to work on projects and really create value out of that connection. So what we did then was to create the first German AI startup landscape from our side, where we tried to look through all the different startups that existed. At that time, it was about 700, and really select the ones where we said, okay, they are good enough, they are ready enough to really work with companies, and it's like it's good for also for companies to really just talk to them and work. But we didn't want to make the selection ourselves, like who are the good startups. So we created a group of interested parties. They consisted of the tech players with the large startup support programs, with a couple of venture capitalists and players from the innovation ecosystem. And we went through all the different startups, started to categorize them so that it's easy to really find them also on a map, and published the first startup landscape from Applied AI. And so what I want is to show you a little bit of what we did there, and I just need to get the access to show my screen. Then I will quickly show you the startup landscape also. So what we did, and that's the startup landscape from 2021. Is a structure around the different fields on enterprise functions, from accounting, HR, marketing, and so on. Enterprise intelligence, which really like focuses on the different types of AI capabilities, to industry-specific AI startups, to technology startups that can help for using these types of technologies in the field of AI. And this startup landscape actually created a huge interest from various parties. And what we got back as feedback was that actually many companies use this landscape really to find startups. And also for the startups, it's a very valuable asset that they can, through that landscape, actually also get companies to work with them. And We then worked on it and created this as a database. So now you can go through that dynamic database. You can see and just click on the startup, see a text of what the startup is about. You can immediately connect to the startup by clicking on the name. And that really helps these organizations and companies to find the best startups to work for. We have a dynamic search there. And that really boosted the collaboration between startups and companies. And in 2019, before Corona, we in our ecosystem meetups, we invited teams from Sweden and from UK to come to Germany and simply get to know the companies that are working on AI. And what we found was that even though they are so close to Germany, these companies did not know the startups from these countries. And it was a huge value for them to get these types of connection, because otherwise it would be really hard to get to know the companies and to understand the interests and to also access the market. So what we then said and discussed with a couple of players in Europe is why don't we create this European startup landscape? Because ultimately that helps the companies, that helps the startups. The more companies and startups are listed on the landscapes, the more valuable the whole landscape gets. So everyone benefits actually from this activity. So what we did and published last year was the first European AI startup landscape. And here with the first two countries, Sweden and France, what you can see here is a list of about 500 startups that work on AI or work with AI technology on a specific solution. It's the same type of logic. You can either click on the different countries to see the national startup landscapes, or you see this aggregated landscape with all the startups from these countries listed here. Again, you see the text, you have the direct connect to the startups. You can look for any types of keywords. So if you just type in quality, then you'll find startups that work on some type of quality control system, either in the industry or, for example, in the production. So it's a kind of a keyword system, and you find the startups. And then after that, you also have a table where you have all the different information on each of those startups. So, and with that list, we actually created a lot of interest from different countries, and we now set up a kind of a framework on how to add more and more countries, and we're talking with about 10 other European countries that actually want to join the startup landscape. And the ultimate goal is to have as many as possible participating. There always need to be one trust partner that has no own interest, like a non-profit organization, like a governmental organization that supports startups, like an AI competence center in the countries that helps us or that does the selection of the startups, and then we add them to the list to really create this European platform where we ultimately want to have as many startups be connected with the companies that want to apply these types of solutions. Ultimately, because we think we have a very strong network in Europe, and what we only want to do is that everyone knows about this network, and that we really collaborate across our countries and form and strengthen our own ecosystem in AI in Europe. And we hope that we can also contribute to that idea with the European startup landscape. So if you are a startup and ask why you're not there, go to your trusted partners in your countries. And obviously, also, I'm also talking here now in this conference because there are now also the plans that we include Norway in this list. And we're happy to have you also there listed soon. On the other hand, if you are one of these organizations that think, well, we want to add our own startup ecosystem from our country, also happy to talk to us, to reach out to us, because ultimately the more participate, the better, and the more powerful it gets, and the more value it also creates for all the startups. So that was it from my side about why we do that, about why we want to also contribute to this European AI ecosystem. And with that, I hand back to you, Birte, and thank you for having me here, and I wish you all a great rest of the conference.
So, hi, everybody. Apparently, my camera is not working. Thank you all so much for attending the launch today. We have really enjoyed well, there I am. We have really enjoyed having you all here. Please now enter into the Gather Town space. I can briefly show it here on video, where we're all having a lot of fun. You don't want to miss out on it. I'm right now standing by Trond from the university in Stavanger. It's very easy to interact. Just simply move your arrows around. Every time an item lights up, just press X to interact with it. You can also stand and chat with all the various people in the room. So please, if you have any questions to anything that was said during the launch today, you're welcome to stand and discuss it afterwards. Thank you again so much for attending the launch today. We hope you enjoyed it and have a great day.